Hey, what's up, everybody? It's BDF44 coming at you with another video. So we have something to talk about. Some pretty good news that I'm hearing out of San Antonio in regards to the Lakers. I hear that Demar Derozan's ready to come home. He's ready to come home. The reports are that he's willing to take a pay cut. Now, what a pay cut means as it pertains to a player like that, I am not certain. But if he's coming at a real discount, he's going to be a real blessing. Let me tell you, I am not a DeMar DeRozan guy as it pertains to I need to have him on my team. But over the last, I'd say 2 months, 3 months, I've grown to the idea of what he would look like on this roster. The thing about it was I just had other guys that I would much rather trade for, and I figured his price would be a little higher than I'd be willing to pay for. So I'm listening to what they're saying, and it's basically, this dude wants to be in LA, and he wants to play for the Lakers. He wants an opportunity to live out his dream and win for his hometown. And I know how much LA means to DeMar DeRozan. I mean, I've heard of his story, and I understand that he has strong roots out here. And he's spent his whole career being loyal to the Toronto Raptors. Some would say he's the greatest Raptor of all time. Arguable, probably between him, Chris Bosh, Kyle Lowry, Vince Carter. Those are names that come to mind for me. Damon Stoudemire, those are guys that come to mind for me. He's amongst those great Toronto Raptors. Kyle Lowry, of course, his boy. So, I think we're talking about a situation where you got a hungry basketball player with sentiment on his mind and his game refined to a point where there's really no upside, but a whole lot of production that he can provide you. Because we know this is a perennial all-star. He makes all-star teams pretty much everywhere he goes. Well, he's only played for 2 teams, you know that. But he makes all-star teams no matter what. And it's one of those situations where he's become a facilitator. He's become more of a complimentary. And what I mean by complimentary is making other guys better. He's been able to incorporate that into his game. Now, his three-point shot comes and goes. He is not a consistent three-point shooter at all. But he is competent from there. He's competent from there. He's a shot maker. And if he limits his shot selection and finds his spots, he can knock it down. But what he's elite at, absolutely one of the greatest of all time at, is the mid-range jumper. He is amongst the elite at the mid-range game. He uses it to perfection. He works his way to his spots. He's a tall guy. I think he's about 6'8", I believe, 6'7", can play 3, play 2, preferably 2-3. And, he takes advantage of that mid-range spot as well as anybody in the game. Couple that with his ability to pass the rock, and I'd say he'd be a real asset to any team. The only problem is, of course, just like in any situation when you're bringing in non-shooters, spacing. And I'm listening to what the Lakers are doing, and I understand that the mentality right now is to kind of abandon the three-point line to a degree, because the last 2 NBA champions have been, in fact, shot-making teams as opposed to three-point shooting teams. So I see that we're venturing away from that, but I don't want to get too far away from it because, as Shannon has told us on one of the segments that I watched recently, you still need to be able to hit threes. You still need to be able to hit them. You don't want to get to a point where you have so many shot makers that you don't have any shooters, and then you end up having games where you're going 2 for 14, 2 for 15, or even more so if those shot makers get to a point where they just want to launch them. And that does tend to happen. When you're talking about a guy like Russell Westbrook, you're talking about a guy like DeMar DeRozan, you're going to have nights where those guys hit the tray, and you're going to have nights where those guys are off. And they will shoot you in or out of a game depending on how they're shooting it. Now, not so much DeMar DeRozan. I think he's a much better shot selector. He will take better shots. He will take shots that he's good at taking and making. So I'm not really worried about him as much. It's just that he will clank some threes, And if you already have a guy who's infamous for clanking, what you have is a very bad situation. A lot of empty offensive possessions that should otherwise go to LeBron James and Anthony Davis. So that's what concerns me about bringing in the type of names that we have coming in. I love the idea of them playing off one another on, and I know this is blasphemous, but in second units on the bench. It doesn't mean that they don't start. It just means that I want to see them get the bulk of their minutes when AD and LeBron James are not on the floor, so that they're not taking away possessions from AD and Bron. Bron and AD should get the ball between the two of them, honestly, 75% of the time. It should be one of those two people shooting. So when you consider the type of players that we're talking about bringing in, A guy like Demar Derozan is going to want about 13, 15 shots a game. Talk about a guy like Russell Westbrook. He's going to take anywhere from 15 shots a game himself, anywhere from 10 to 15 shots a game. I'm assuming he's going to scale that back on this team, though. So both of them are great passers. That's the good thing. They're not, neither one of these guys that we're talking about bringing in are going to make the offense stagnant. They just may have empty possessions here and there, but these are still great players that we're talking about. And to be completely honest with you, if you're bringing in lesser players, you could have some of these same problems. So you'd much rather have great players shooting these shots than not so great players shooting them. And I think the Lakers are looking to stack the deck. I'm looking at what they're doing, the type of players they're talking about getting. They're talking about really, really having size out there, really having athleticism, even albeit older athleticism nonetheless. What I see going on down here, it seems like the Lakers want to take an athletic approach. Now, obviously, DeMar DeRozan would probably fall in our laps, sort of like we got. God, my mind's gone blank, but my guy Montrezl Harrell. It looks like that's kind of going to be that type of situation. The guy just wants to come home. The guy just wants to be here, et cetera, et cetera. Which reminds me, Montrezl did opt in to his contract. I still have not lost sight of who that is. I'm happy to have Montrezl on my team if we're using him right. Do you understand what I'm saying? I can think of a million teams that I'm running. Let's say I'm a GM of a bunch of different teams. I'd love to have Montrezl on this team. So if the Lakers want to trade Montrezl, I'm pretty sure we'll find suitors. And I wouldn't undervalue the guy just because he had a down season, because a lot of what went wrong in that regard had to do with how we were running the team and the presence of Andre Drummond and stuff like that, trying to incorporate him in. It had nothing to do with Trez. Trez is healthy. Trez is ready to roll, and I expect Trez to give you 20 and 10 wherever he goes. So if that means here next year, if we play him right, very happy to have him. I haven't forgotten who he is. But anyway, back to what we were saying, DeMar DeRozan, Russell Westbrook. I'm assuming the Lakers are going to try to land both of these guys. We are the Lakers. We tend to do that. And if the price is going to be low on DeMar DeRozan, then there really is no argument to be had. Bring him in, make him happy. And just, when I look at AD, I love the idea of having a DeMar DeRozan on this team when I look at AD. Because that's a guy who may be able to play a little longer than Bron. Now, I know that DeMar's been in the game for a while, so you're definitely looking for him to be the running mate that succeeds LeBron James. But assuming you have a situation where he's still on the roster when Bron leaves, your team doesn't suck. You know what I mean? You love having a guy like that. So I don't know where he is in terms of how he's aging in the league. I don't know where he's at. Last I saw, his numbers were still fantastic. I don't know if he's lost a step or something. He's already one of the great athletic two guards in the game. He's always been that. So even if he's to lose a step, he's still going to be capable of getting off the floor and doing probably some fantastic highlights for us. So I welcome DeMar DeRozan with open arms as a Laker fan. I welcome him as a LA native. I'm hopeful he can have a career year from shooting from three with us, because those shots will be open. And I'd be happy for him to get on this Laker team so he could finally not have to face LeBron. This is somebody who's been terrorized by LeBron probably as much as any one single player ever has, especially in the playoffs. So if he's able to come to the Lakers, not ever have to face that demon that is LeBron because he's on his team, and get a chance to get some wins with the guy as opposed to just constantly getting beat up by him, I think that would be an amazing blessing for him on a professional level, just to not have to face that guy. Now, I've never heard him say anything about that, but it stands to reason why every time the Toronto Raptors ran into LeBron James, it was a real struggle. And so DeMar DeRozan deserves an opportunity to win, just like the rest of these guys that are talking about coming here, and I hope that they're able to do it. I hope that he's able to live his dream and become a Laker. Him and Westbrook. Can you imagine both of them coming to the Lakers at the same time, winning the championship? It's ultimate. That's the ultimate thing for a Laker fan. Trust you me, that's the ultimate thing. And I know both of those guys are Laker fans. So that's what I got, man. That's what I think should be. I hear that Kyle Lowry wants to link up with his best friend. I don't know if they're best friends, but very good friend, very close friend, DeMar DeRozan, if he comes to the Lakers. Of course I want Kyle Lowry on this team. I just don't know how you fit all of those guys into your cap situation. I don't see that as possible. Now, I hear that Chris Paul has reneged any interest on the Los Angeles Lakers. He is not interested in being a Laker. CP3, not a Laker. So I just want to put that out there. That's information that I've heard. I don't know how true that is, but I hope it's true because I really don't want CP3. I want us to go with a more athletic approach. I would much rather have Westbrook. I hear Malcolm Brogdon is a name that's also on the Lakers' radar. I've been a fan of Brogdon since he came into the league. He's run the Rookie of the Year. He's one of those guys like THT who has very long arms, even though he's not overly tall. He can shoot the ball. He takes the offense by the horns. He's an aggressive point guard who can set up your offense, rebound the ball, score like the wind. He's a shot maker. I wouldn't say he's a shooter, but he's a shot maker. And he's one of those guys that's been on my wish list the whole time. So if we can land Malcolm Brogdon, that would be a personal, triumphant move in regards to what I'm hopeful for. I think that would be the way they need to go because he's fantastic on the defensive end. Like I said, he and THT pretty much should be playing with one another. They're almost identical, just further along in terms of Malcolm Brogdon. They have the same type of body type, same type of skill set, same type of strengths. It's really one of those things where it's like, I like what we're doing if we're trying to get these type of players. Guys who can put the ball on the floor on their own, guys who can defend, long arms, and are deceptively long. See, sometimes it's like you don't really realize. I remember a guy like, who else comes to mind who was like that? Shannon Brown was like that. Shannon Brown was like 6'3", but had super long arms. So when he did jump, he could jump higher and further on than others because he had ridiculous mounts and the arms. So that's what I like about players like that, the deceptively long. Just don't realize because of how short they are, how long their arms are. Who else is like that? Eric Bledsoe's like that. He's one of those guys. So, I tend to pay attention to players like that, especially when they can shoot, and Brogdon can. So that's somebody we should be definitely taking very seriously. So, yeah, man, that's what I'm hearing, man. That's what I'm hearing. A lot of guys are looking this way. Dennis Schroeder is all but out. I'm pretty certain he's going to, gonna be a part of any trade that we make. That's what I see. That's what I'm trying to say. I think that this will be a sign and trade situation with him heading wherever we're sending him. I was told. Now, I read somewhere that he was in agreement with a trade to the Washington Wizards. Now, I don't know how much truth that is, but it's just something I read somewhere, so take that for what it's worth. If we're to trade for Russell Westbrook, I hear that he's on board. So that's good news. THT, speaking of THT, he opted in or something like that. I think we picked up an option on him for an extra year. I can totally see us trading that, unfortunately. But I'm hopeful that we don't. I'm very hopeful that we don't. He's definitely the type of player I'd like to keep, but I just understand that any trade you make, unfortunately, is going to be with him as probably the forefront of what most teams want. But for me, I'm all on board with bringing Brogdon in and bringing THT, keeping THT, and then letting them play off one another, which I know is secretly a recipe for success for the Lakers or any team that has those two guys on at the same time. So, yeah, man, I look at the game a certain way, man. I'm looking at these different players that we can match up, piece up, and I'm loving what we're doing in regards to trying to go after a point guard. I want us to also pay very close attention to the center position. We don't need to take that lightly. Size is how we win. And even though we have AD, and most of the lineups that we've had are best with him playing the center, I still very much believe that we should allow him the respect of not having to play the center, even though we're at our best when he does. That's the respect we give him for forcing his way here. He don't want to bang. We shouldn't force him to. Make sure we have a center. I know we were talking about looking at a guy like Mo Bamba. It's a great time to go get Mo Bamba. His value's not quite where it needs to be, but he's in the type of shape to make you realize that he's about to be what it is that you thought he was going to be. We saw glimpses of that last year in Orlando. I don't know what their plans are. They have a lot of draft picks. It would be a great time to try to go after a player like that whose value isn't where it's going to be. I'm still on the Lonzo Ball train. I would love for the Lakers to bring in Lonzo if we're not able to land any of those other point guards. I don't have him last on my list, but in terms of cachet, those other guys are ahead. I don't know what's going on with the Dame Lillard thing, but like I said, I feel like other teams have better packages. So unless he forces his way to LA, I don't see them taking our deal. And I think the Lakers are using Westbrook and possibly other guards as a means of trying to provide themselves some leverage in a deal for Dame. Because if I know how Rob Pelinka thinks, he's not really after anyone but the best player available. Same with Bron. They want Dame. I haven't forgotten that situation where Dame and Bron, slapped hands and all that. We know when that means Bron chooses you. Whether you choose him or not, Bron chooses you. And if I'm reading the tea leaves, there's two players I think Bron wants to play with this season. It's Dame Lillard and it's Lonzo Ball. Those are the two guys that I'm sensing he wants. I don't know where we go from there. Obviously, that's not enough. But those are the players that I think he wants. Both of them. And that's the thing. It's like when you have multiple facilitators, Bron doesn't have to take on that role, and he can start scoring a little more. He can sit a little more. The team runs a lot better if we have that. We had it with Rondo, and it really, really helped us. We didn't have it with Schroeder, and it was as a result when Bron went down, we weren't able to sustain much. That wasn't our only problem, obviously, but it's definitely one we need to acknowledge and do something about. DeRozan can help take care of that. Obviously, all these point guards can help take care of that. So it's good to know that we're thinking that way. I haven't heard the Lakers doing enough talking about shooters, though. I'm not going to lie to you guys. I love all that we're doing, but we have to also make sure we have the shooters. And you don't want to get shooters that suck, because then you can't play them. You got shooters that can't defend. You got shooters that can't put the ball on the floor. You don't want those guys. You want to kind of put some cachet, some money into your shooting so that they can have a little more to them than just shooting. That's why I think one of the stars we should go after should be a shooter. I really believe in the Bradley Beals and the CJ McCollums, obviously Klay Thompson, clearly. Type of player, who can do that. Bradley Beal's probably the best one for us in terms of no injury issues, all the fit and stuff like that. I think Bradley's probably the best name that comes to mind. I'm a Zach LaVine guy too. Would love to have him, even though I don't see him as a shooter necessarily. We know he can string together 8, 9 threes in one game with no problem. So that's along the lines I want us to go. You've heard me mention other names, guys like Evan Fournier, Robert Covington have been mentioned recently. I don't know what their status is, but I'd love to see us take a look at players of that caliber. I look at Marcus Morris down the hall in the Clipper land. He's the type of shooter I want. There's so many other guys, man. There's a lot of players in this league that can help you. I hear Reggie Bullock was talking about coming back. When Reggie left here, he wasn't the type of player that I really wanted to be here. The problem is he's gotten a lot better since he went to New York. And he did some things in New York that made me say, you know what, he's exactly the type of shooter that's not going to cost a whole lot that I think would fit in on this roster and really kick tail. When we had him, we still had the kids running around. There wasn't no Bron. There wasn't no real direction for the team. He was still a young player, hadn't had a lot of experience yet. Now, he's going on to New York, had some starters minutes, had some playoff minutes, has shown that he can be kind of inconsistent, but is getting better. And if he's getting better, then he's only getting better from here. So as far as I'm concerned, it's a good time to invest in a guy like Reggie Bullock. He's entering his prime, and he's stepping into his own. And I'm paying a close attention to him from afar. So those are the type of shooters I want, man. I'm looking around the league. I'm thinking about who can help this team. I don't know if guys are free agents. I don't care. Trade for them if you have to. If you can. If not, move on. But that's the type of thing I'm thinking. So that's what it is. The NBA is going to get interesting over the next several days because the draft is coming up. And as you know, when drafts start to happen, trades are usually either beforehand, during, or after, or all three. So it's going to get interesting. Yeah, I don't want to get into too many different topics. We'll keep it Lakers. Thank you guys for watching. My name is BDF44, and I'm out.